Hi, I'm the Octopus Lady, you're watching Alien Ocean, and let's talk about needlefish today, shall we? So I was first introduced to needlefish when I visited Hawaii a few years ago. I was out snorkeling by a coral reef when I saw these strange, long, thin, silvery fish hanging out really close to the surface of the water. And I've barely ever seen fish do that before. I later did a little research into them and found out that perhaps they shouldn't be called needlefish, but maybe something a little more appropriate like the bone-piercing murderers of the seven seas. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get the usual stuff out of the way first. So needlefish are part of the phylum Chordata, the subphylum Vertebrata, the giga class Actinopterygii, which are the ray-finned fishes, and they have fins that look like this. And you might be like, don't all fish have fins that look like that? But they don't. This is a lobed finned fish. And as you can see, their fins are shaped very differently from the ray-finned fishes. But that's a whole other video. I'm getting a little off topic here because I want to point out that Actinopterygian fish make up 50% of all currently living vertebrates. Did you know that? Because I didn't know that. No wonder it's called a giga class. Anyway, needlefish are then found in the normal class, Teleosteae, then the order Beloniformes, and then finally the family Belonidae. I don't know how to pronounce these two words. And fun fact, the order of Beloniformes also includes the flying fish. You know, the fish that fly out of the water? Just something to keep in mind. Anyway, needlefish are found in the tropics and subtropics of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. They're found both out in the open sea as well as closer to shore, and unlike many other fish, they hang out almost exclusively near the surface of the water. Something else to keep in mind. And finally, the oldest fossils we can find of needlefish are 33.9 to 37.7 million years old, making them around the same age as moray eels, sacoglossan slugs, frogfish, and coconut crabs. So they're gonna go here, I guess. Let's move on. So, needlefish have murdered people. Sorry, I didn't know how to transition smoothly into this part. They've straight up assassinated them. They have killed in exothermic blood. We don't say cold blood in biology anymore because it's an outdated term. I don't know if anyone's going to get this joke. And there's two big reasons why needlefish have caused people to sleep with the fishes. Almost literally. One is because of their long, thin jaws. The biggest needlefish is the houndfish, and they can get to be up to 1.5 meters long, and that does include their jaws, which can get to be 30 centimeters long. That's like a foot long in measurements more recognizable to us less civilized members of the world. Most needlefish, though, aren't that big and don't have jaws that long, but even with shorter jaws, they can do serious damage, because the other reason they're able to kill people is due to their love of jumping. These bad boys got hops. They can, ostensibly, launch themselves out of the water at 64 kilometers an hour, but I'm gonna be totally transparent. I don't know where this number came from. It's like it materialized out of nowhere. I kept seeing it over and over again across different papers, but the sources these papers cited didn't say anything about the jumping speeds of needlefish. Like, okay, this article was cited repeatedly as being the source, but I read it like 8 times, and it never, not once, mentioned anything about how fast needlefish jump. Another supposed source was this textbook that's over 600 pages long, and I ain't reading all that, but I did search for the terms kilometers per hour, needlefish, and belonids, which again is their family name, and found nothing. Then this quote-unquote paper from 1950 was cited, and I was like, oh, this has to be the original source, but it turns out this wasn't even a scientific paper, it was a letter to the editor type thing, and it wasn't even about needlefish. It was about a completely different kind of fish called a half-beak. The only explanation I can find for this number is this one paper that says that we know that flying fish jump out of the water at 64 kilometers an hour, and needlefish and flying fish are part of the same order, therefore needlefish jump at 64 kilometers an hour too, which, no, that is not sound scientific reasoning. Walruses and cheetahs both belong to the same order, and I'm pretty sure only one of them is capable of running at speeds of 90 kilometers an hour. Not to mention that most of the papers I read that referenced 64 kilometers an hour for needlefish were not written by marine biologists, but by physicians reporting on injuries caused by needlefish. And what do they know about the ocean? They spend all their time studying humans. Ugh. I'm pretty convinced at this point that these doctors just made up this number for some reason, and that actual marine biologists don't know how fast needlefish jump, but I can confirm that we do know that they jump fast. And that's all the information you need, really, to explain why needlefish are such stone-cold killers. Because if you have a face that looks like this, and you can jump really fast, and you like to hang out near the surface of bodies of water, you're gonna eventually stab someone. People have gotten stabbed in the face, in the eye, in the neck, in the thorax, which I didn't know humans have. I thought that was just an arthropod thing. In the stomach, in the arms, in the legs, and in the butt. And these aren't little pinpricks. They're not tiny, harmless injuries. No, needlefish have stabbed straight through people's arms, like in one side and out the other. And they've also stabbed straight through people's face. One guy was just finishing up scuba diving, so he was floating at the surface, and a needlefish launched itself out of the water and gave him the most extreme facial piercing you've ever seen. The fish stabbed through the bone in his face, entered the left side of his nose, punctured his septum, exited the right side of his nose, and almost hit his eye. And I'm sorry, I can't get over this, but the fish stabbed this guy so hard, it pierced bone, y'all. Needlefish shouldn't be called needlefish. They should be called bone piercers. Tell me that isn't a much cooler name. Though, to be clear, I don't think needlefish can pierce most bones. Like, I'm pretty sure the needlefish that went straight through people's arms didn't go through their arm bones. They just went through the muscle. I don't think their jaws are strong enough to do that. It's just this particular bone in your face is quite thin. But still, bone piercers is such a better name. Needlefish, hit your girl up. I'd be happy to organize this rebrand for you. Anyway, so surgeons had to go in and remove all the jaw pieces from this guy's face, but also had to give all his soft tissues like a really thorough cleaning, because along with having a needle-like jaw, these fish also have needle-like teeth, which just love to get all up in your muscles and mucous membranes and epitheliums? Are these types of soft tissue? I didn't bother looking any up because humans are boring. Anyway, if you don't clean all the teeth out, you're in a lot of trouble. Needlefish are carnivores, so they're always eating raw meat, basically, which makes their teeth putrid. And that's not my opinion. That was a word I saw in a couple different articles about needlefish injuries. They kept saying, these fish have putrid teeth, and their teeth are putrid. And I was like, okay, you can stop being so mean, like, we get it. But I think putrid has some sort of medically significant definition that I'm not familiar with. I don't know, let me know in the comments if that's true, or if these authors were just being unnecessarily mean towards needlefish. Anyway, because needlefish teeth are unclean, I guess. If they're left in your soft tissues, said tissues can become necrotic. Fortunately, the guy with the most hardcore septum piercing in history recovered from his injuries with no long-term consequences, but others haven't been so lucky. Multiple people have lost an eye to a needlefish, and sometimes worse. A needlefish jumped out and stabbed a man in the eye, and that also somehow damaged important cranial nerves, and he became permanently paralyzed on the left side of his body. A young boy in Hawaii also got stabbed in the eye, and the needlefish actually went so deep that it punctured his brain and killed him. Another guy got stabbed in the back by a needlefish, and when he saw a doctor about it that same day, the doctor just sutured up the small wound and sent him on his way, which was to his death because a few hours later he died from internal bleeding. The man's autopsy revealed that over 1 liter of blood had spilled into his peritoneal cavity and his stomach. Like, I know I've been saying needlefish stab people a lot in this video, but I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. A few articles I read were very insistent on telling doctors needlefish wounds must be treated like stab wounds. They can look small and innocuous, but for all you know, a lung or intestine or superior vena cava have been punctured, and your patient is 2 seconds away from shuffling off this mortal coil. Okay, so to recap, big reason number 1 why needlefish can kill people, it's because of their face shape. Big reason number 2 is because they jump really fast. But why do they jump? Sometimes they jump because they get startled, maybe by a predator or a human going by on a surfboard or something. Another reason they jump is because they're positively phototaxis, which is just a fancy way to say attracted to light. A lot of people who get attacked by needlefish are night fishermen who use flashlights while fishing. Some articles claim that many of these fishermen fear needlefish more than sharks, which makes sense. You're mostly protected from sharks if you stay in your boat, but that isn't true about needlefish. But easily the most interesting reason why needlefish jump has to do with hunting prey. So needlefish like to hunt baitfish that hang out near the surface of the water. Baitfish are like small species of fish that stay together in schools for protection. Now, if you're a predator that goes after schooling fish, you have a couple problems to contend with. Firstly, you have to deal with the confusion effect. Basically, if you throw yourself into a giant group of prey and they all start swimming in a bajillion different directions, you get confused. You can't figure out which individual fish to go after. There's just too many of them. So you end up catching Nothing. Something to keep in mind, though, the smaller a school of fish is, the less of an effect the confusion effect has. Secondly, you have to deal with your prey escaping. And if you're hunting prey that hangs out at the surface of the water, they have one of the best escape routes available, out of the water. Lots of small surface-dwelling baitfish will leap out into the air to escape from you. And if you're not much of a jumping fish, well, you can't chase after them. And even if you are a jumping fish, once your prey leaves the water, you don't got eyes on them anymore. You don't know which way they went, and you're not a bird. So if you leap out after them, realize they went this way and not this way, you can't readjust your position midair, so your prey is gone. So this is how needlefish tackle these problems. Almost literally, needlefish will approach a school of fish, often staying at a perpendicular angle to them. This is likely to help keep themselves as unnoticeable as possible to their prey, and I'm going to use a pencil to demonstrate my point here. Because when something basically shaped like this orients itself perpendicularly to you, it's a lot harder to see, right? Then the needlefish will launch itself out of the water, fly through the air, and then land right into the school of fish. This does two things. A, the prey fish do not jump out of the water when they're attacked from above. They instead do the exact opposite and swim down, a much less effective escape route and much easier for a predator to chase after. Again, once you and your prey are airborne, if you're not both headed in the same direction, you're not catching that prey. And B, by landing in the middle of the school, the needlefish splits it into two smaller groups. Then it can just pick one of those groups and focus on that, thus reducing the confusion effect. But jumping might add yet more bonuses. The first has to do with distance. One study was looking at a specific species of needlefish, and it was estimated that it had a lunge distance of about 50 centimeters. And lunging is different from leaping. It's when a needlefish attacks directly from the side of a school of fish and doesn't leave the water. But that same needlefish species was seen leaping at baitfish from 200 centimeters away. A jump attack allows needlefish to stay much farther away from their prey, which further decreases their chances of being detected. And finally, jumping may allow them to take advantage of something called Snell's window. You ever heard of it? If you haven't, you might have seen it if you've gone swimming before. So you know when you're outside on land and you look up, you can see all of the sky, like from horizon to horizon. You ever notice you can't see nearly as much sky if you're looking up at it when you're underwater, even when the water is perfectly clear? Most of your view of the sky is obscured, except for this circle of transparency directly above you. That's Snell's window. It's a phenomenon caused by how light reflects through water? Or refracts through water? Whatever, I don't care enough to learn the details of this because this is all physics stuff and physics is for nerds, but basically, what you need to know is that if you're looking up through Snell's window, you can't see anything above the water if it's at less than a 50-degree angle to you. And while researchers don't know for sure, they think needlefish take advantage of this fact because they always launch themselves out of the water and subsequently land back in the water at an angle that is less than 30 degrees. That means their prey literally cannot see them coming. Needlefish are like the stealth ballistic missiles of the ocean. I think. I don't know how ballistic missiles work, or if you can make them stealthy. Now, I imagine that many of you are expecting me to say that needlefish skewer their prey on their long, thin jaws, but I'm afraid that isn't true. And I know, that's very disappointing. But like, think about it, right? If needlefish skewered other fish on their jaws, then they can't open their jaws. And they don't have hands, so they can't pull the skewered fish off of them, which means that any needlefish who ends up like this is going to starve to death in the most ironic way possible. Instead, once a needlefish is close enough to their prey, they just open their jaws and, you know, eat it like a normal fish. Which begs the question, why do needlefish have needles for faces, if not for stabbing their prey? Well, this paper talks about how fish with long jaws kind of do a trade-off when compared to fish with short jaws. Chasing prey takes energy, so the less energy you use to catch prey, the more successful you'll be at survival. Having long jaws gives you more reach, so you don't have to travel as far as a short-jawed fish to catch prey, and therefore, you spend less energy than the short-jawed fish. Long jaws also close a lot faster than short jaws. The trade-off, though, is that long jaws are weaker than short jaws. They can't bite as hard, and the closer you are to the tip of them, the weaker the bite strength is. So, you know, it's like long-jawed fish are optimizing their reach and speed stats, while short-jawed fish are optimizing their strength stat. Ugh, I sounded like Tirzu just then. Ugh, gross. Blech. And while I didn't read this in any paper, I imagine that having a long, thin mouth helps the needlefish be more aerodynamic and hydrodynamic, making them that much more efficient at jumping out of the water to attack their prey, but that's just speculation on my part. Now, despite how dramatic all this sounds, I don't want to be out here mongering any fear around needlefish. They're not nefarious, conspiring animals attempting first-degree murder on any human they see. They're not intentionally trying to hurt us. Most of the time when needlefish jump, they're either hunting prey, got startled by something, or it's nighttime and they're jumping towards a source of light. And as near as I can tell, since the 1960s, less than 100 people have gotten stabbed by needlefish, and most of them were the night fishermen I mentioned previously. And most of them were not stabbed in the face, and most of them seem to recover without any issues. Dying or becoming paralyzed doesn't seem to happen very often. Also, many of these fishermen were indigenous men from islands like Hawaii or Papua New Guinea, where they traditionally fish in very low-walled boats, similar to canoes, which needlefish can easily jump into. If you're fishing in a boat with much higher walls, the needlefish are just gonna smack into them and you'll be fine. When I was snorkeling with them in Hawaii, I know I poked my head out of the water multiple times when needlefish were nearby, and so did tons of other snorkelers. And needlefish were not constantly launching themselves out of the ocean to impale people in their eyes. And I know that's anecdotal, but if needlefish were a constant and serious threat to people swimming around them, I'm pretty sure local governments would discourage or even close off snorkeling and scuba diving areas that had high populations of needlefish. So while I desperately want to rename them to the bone-piercing murderers of the 7 seas, it's probably a lot better for their public image if they stick with the somewhat less terrifying name of needlefish. Okay, so you know earlier when I was talking about those physicians who seemingly made up stuff about needlefish? Well, I gotta tell you about this amazing documentary called 17 Pages, and it's about a time some scientists maybe made some stuff up for an academic paper, and that eventually resulted in one of the largest scientific controversies in the 20th century. It all started with an ethics question about a single biology paper, but then, things kept escalating and escalating until it got the attention of national media and US Congress, and it's still affecting the way we investigate scientific misconduct to this day, and oh my god, there is this twist halfway through the documentary that just blew my mind. I didn't see it coming. It was like a sucker punch to the kidneys. It was like being run over by a truck. It was like getting stabbed in the face with a needlefish made of scientific controversy. It's really good! And even though it's made by celebrated YouTuber Bobby Broccoli, you will not find this documentary on YouTube. You will only find it over on my streaming service, Nebula. Nebula is a prestige streaming platform that is full of thoughtful, high-quality content about all sorts of interesting topics and ideas. It's like Netflix, but for people who like trains. But unlike Netflix, which apparently has ads now, which is wild, everything on Nebula is completely ad-free, and there are no manipulative algorithms telling you what to watch, so you can enjoy 17 Pages without any fuss. This documentary is an example of one of our Nebula originals, which is content you can only watch on Nebula, and includes a bunch of shows from some of your other favorite creators, like Real Science's Becoming Human, Joe Scott Presents Mysteries of the Human Body, and Wendover Productions' The Logistics of X. And for the month of February, you'll get 50% off a yearly subscription, so it'll only cost $30 to watch Nebula for an entire year. That shakes out to only $2.50 a month. So sign up for Nebula either by using this QR code or by signing up with my link, go.nebula.tv/theoctopuslady, and check out 17 Pages now. Seriously, y'all, it's really good. And with that, thanks for watching another episode of Alien Ocean. I know it's been a minute since I last made a video. Sorry about that. I've been dealing with health problems that I don't really want to get into, but I made a post on the post tab of my YouTube channel a couple weeks ago saying that I haven't been doing great, and a bunch of y'all left really sweet comments wishing me well and telling me not to push myself too hard working and get burnt out, and goodness, I can't even begin to articulate how much I love and appreciate all of you. It means everything to me that y'all are so willing to be so patient with me while I work on my videos. But unfortunately, if I'm not making videos, I'm not getting paid. So if you have the means, please consider signing up for my Patreon, patreon.com/theoctopuslady, which is the best way to support me directly. Depending on which tier you sign up for, you can get early access to my videos and or your name in the beautiful credits. But if you'd like to just make a one-time donation, I also have a Ko-Fi or Coffee or however you pronounce it. Any contributions will be deeply appreciated because, as I've said in one or two other videos before, you'll be supporting me during a time when it's really hard for me to work because my body is being Stupid. Remember, kids, if you're a disembodied sentient entity, do not tie yourself to a corporeal form, aka a physical body, because they're dumb and just cause a lot of problems. Like, you gotta feed your corporeal form and make sure it stays hydrated and that it gets enough sleep, and it's a whole thing when it gets sick. Anyway, I do really want to emphasize that I don't want you sending me money if you can't afford it. I know it's rough out there economically for everyone. YouTube really likes it when people stay till the end of a video, which you have clearly done, and I appreciate that all the same. Anyway, be sure to like, share, subscribe, check out my other videos. That's another great way to support me. All that stuff. And until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood octopus lady, reminding you that you don't have to go into space to find aliens.